Your comments, Ann.
Well, I really want to talk about H5N1, about this traveler that brought it back to the northern hemisphere here.
The nurse who went to Alberta.
The nurse yes, she was only in Beijing. She didn't travel around. As far as they know, she didn't have any contact with poultry. And not only that, she was healthy, and she went with her mother, and then when she came back, she developed symptoms on the plane from Beijing to Seattle, not Seattle, from Beijing to Vancouver, BC. And then, but they let her wander around the airport there, and then she went on to Edmonton, Alberta, and again, she reported in, and they said, well, you've got a respiratory problem, go home. So she went home, and she came back on the 1st of January with a terrible headache, and she died on the 3rd of January, and essentially she died of meningitis and encephalitis. Now, she was confirmed to have H5N1, but it was a wild strain. Is what they're saying. In other words, we've been watching H5N1 in the Middle East, especially in Egypt. And I thought the first H5N1 virus would come from the Middle East, but instead it came from China. This makes me think that this was an attempt at biowarfare.
It's already happening. That's just like our scientist in Colorado, our one in DHS here in America, and a scientist in Shanghai confirmed the H7N9 is a bioweapon, so is H5N1. And the first time I got exposed to information on this was 1997, March 16th, when I traveled to Zurich. And the directors of the board of directors of Human Life International smuggled the documents out of the Basel headquarters of the World Health Organization. They were trying to build a super virus resurrection of the swine flu or an avian flu so they could start a worldwide pandemic and literally take control of countries using this as a lever. And when I saw 6 years later, the article by Dr. Osterholm on my journals in my apartment, because my family had moved back to Nova Scotia and I was still running my practice in Denver, Colorado, I couldn't believe what I saw, and my jaw dropped 6 years after this now, that Dr. Osterholm said the pandemic flu is coming. And of course, by 2006, this is 3 years later, every nation on earth has handed over their healthcare system and their military to the United Nations and World Health Organizations in the face of any airborne pandemic.
Well, the World Health Organization has not asked for any particular collection of samples or identification of sick people coming in on airplanes to any country. Anyway, I want to read this. It says, an autopsy was not done due to concerns regarding the risk of virus transmission. That's pretty strong, Dr. Bell.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever heard of that?
It's very bad. This indicates that the virus was probably transmitted also to other contacts inside the flying culture tube called an aircraft, the Silver Bird, and that there's a nidus of infection in China ready to leap across the Pacific, etc. We're already here. And you have one more comment, then we want to hear from Professor McCanny about these flus. I've been preparing for years. That's why we're miles and miles ahead of the competition. There's not even a kind of competition. It's like Usain Bolt, the Jamaican runner. Hey, man, you get on the track. I don't want to embarrass you. Why don't you sit over there and watch me run? Why are they doing that? When we've got nutraceuticals to knock out all these pathogens, we've got nutraceuticals to detox you and rebuild your cells. If people don't understand, these nurses and doctors, I'm getting calls every day now. What do I do? What do I do? I said, first off, don't go in the hospital without an IN95 mask and trash it at night in a biohazard bag. Don't touch anything unless you have a Ziploc bag with defense wipes and wipe your hands off. Soap doesn't kill off viruses. All it does is make your hands dry out. Okay, it kills off some of the Wally bugs and even the Arnold Schwarzenegger bugs survive, but viruses, it doesn't do a damn thing for them. If you want to get rid of viruses, you have to stick your hands in ultraviolet light, and if you do too much, you're going to get UV burns. You need to use antivirals that disrupt the viral capsid so the virus becomes naked and gets destroyed. I tell people, and you don't want to use silver lungs generator or some colloidal silver. You want to use the actual ionic silver like our silver 100. Thousands of times stronger. You want the actual Tesla-activated diatomic iodine. We have the only one in the world. And you want to use allicin med, which is the best cost per milligram of activated allicin. We have the most powerful oral form of immunoglobulins in the world. Head-to-head studies already done with intravenous immunoglobulins, and we have NutriDefense, the most powerful anhydrous catechin to block the viral receptor binding domain. I tell people, don't waste your time trying to catch up. The race is over, the prizes are given, and it's done. So it's important to understand, I knew this was coming because I got the documents in 1997. When I saw these reports, and I talked to our guys like in Delta Force back in 1997 at that conference in St. Louis, I knew there were going to be nukes going off in U.S. cities. I knew there were going to be radiation from either a spent fuel pool or one of these nuclear reactors going on because I took care of employees in Savannah, Georgia, working on our only plutonium detonator plant in America. I took care of the reactor cells in Chicago. I was in a nuclear division of ACOM. I took care of the employees doing hazmat in Rocky Flats. I can tell you firsthand, as on a different day, I can't tell you if the government and their employees and minions are stupid, dangerous, deadly, or just plain evil. It's a toss-up. And people out there might really be shocked by that, but too damn bad. Too damn bad about you. You're going to get full face. This is DEAGLE. This is the 2014 version of DEAGLE. Not necessarily good. It's called DEAGLE with a mohawk. How's that? Okay? Face it. And if you don't listen up to the reports from John and Ann and our other experts, you're going to get really in a state of shock this year. If you're not preparing yourself for the flu, for power blackouts, for martial law, for anything, and I mean simple level 1 martial law, 2 weeks no bank holiday, if you don't have cash in your home, you don't have food and water, you're not prepared, if you go outside, you're an enemy combatant. You will be put in a civil detention camp to make sure you're cross-contaminated with either radiological material or a biological weapon, such as these flus. This is not a joke. This is the real big show. And, you know, this is not reality TV. This is not putting on a miniseries. We're the real fourth dimensional reality, ugly as hell, but we can survive it if we do simple things. And if we want a republic back, we got to fight for it. It's not going to happen just because we like liberty. You don't have to like liberty. You have to be willing to put your prize, your blood, your property, your family, yourself, 100% with the power and the wisdom of the Most High God on the line in order for us to win this back. And it's not going to be funny. There's going to be a lot of watering with our blood to bring liberty back to this land that's been horrified. Your comments, Ann?
Well, I think that we need to tell people that for the H1N1, you might want to consider a voluntary quarantine because it's going to peak in February and it'll last into March. I mean, they're already quoting. It looks. Go ahead.
I got a hunker down date, but it's a moving date, but I have a hunker down date. My birthday is February 15th. I was born in midnight Valentine's. And I can tell you, I figure around the middle of February, I'm going to be hunkering down, and I will not be going out anywhere for several weeks because by the time I'm tracking all these cases, and you can online, and they start to really peak, you don't want to go outside because there'll probably be genetic polymorphism, meaning more than one deadly version of this virus. Or more than one virus out there, like H5N1, H7N9, or beta coronavirus 2. The globalists are planning on medical pandemic flu martial law this year, period. That's not a prediction, that's a warning. And it's just below a prophecy, but it's going to happen this year. It's happening as we speak right now. If this hits 3% to 5% case fatality rate, things are going to shut down for 6 to 10 weeks until the wave passes. That's based on biology. Based on everything I know, which is pretty considerable, that's what I see coming this year. Your comments, John?
Well, everything's pointing at us. We've got some pretty well-known people, Gerald Celente, among others, that are pointing to the dire economic circumstances we have. We have our friend Ann Morrison talking about what's very likely biological weapons in the form of flu viruses. Myself and Dave Hodges and others talking about the Russian and Chinese presence in this country. All these things seem to be converging in this calendar year, 2012, 13.
And now we have a president who says he has 2014, yeah. And now we have a president who says, like as I say, he's a late night TV host who has been co-opted to be an actor and president. He says, I got a pen and I got a phone. And now let's hear from our expert on space weather and so much about plasma physics, Professor McKinney. Welcome back to the program. It's been a few weeks, and Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah, Happy New Year, and 2014. What an interesting concept to have lived through 2012 and now 2013. So, we all need to get the T-shirts, I think. Distribute them or something.
Well, remember until now, 1914, everybody was optimistic in the first 14 years of the 20th century. And then all of a sudden, World War I broke out. Within 7 months after, they had the new banking Federal Reserve System set up. 7 months later, it broke out World War I. And the fact is the banking system is now obsolete. This past December 24th, really 100 years since it's in action. And we're now in the same position that we're about to have an economic collapse from multiple possible causes. The collapse of Japan, a bond market run, the collapse of the Central Bank of Europe, the Chinese aggressiveness now in the South China Sea, trying to seize an island and aggravating the heck out of the Japanese, who are incredibly well-armed and incredibly aggressive. And they'll smack down the Chinese so fast they won't know what hit them. And now we even have moved F-22 Raptors to the Japanese bases out there in Japan, getting ready, and in the Philippines, getting ready for a Chinese attack on an island there because they want to seize island territory even in the Philippines. This is going to get nasty, and in the midst of it, we have these coronal mass ejections occurring that are, just like you would call rocket-propelled grenades in space, whipping past the Earth, that are going to trigger off earthquakes, volcanoes, extremely crazy weather like we've seen lately. And on top of that, they're geoengineering the weather, because I don't believe there's any such thing as normal weather anymore. I think the normal weather was about 20 years ago. Now everything is being geoengineered, primarily now to protect us from a massive wave of airborne radiation from Japan. And I think as these CMEs hit us, they're going to trigger off major earthquakes, which means Fukushima is going to go. As they say, it's like when Moby Dick arrives at the side of the ship in the old movie. She's going to blow, and you get this giant whale. Moby Dick's about to knock the ship over because it looks like a little speck beside the whale. That's where we're at. And, give us some plasma physics of what you see happening this year, next, and the activity of the sun, because we hit solar max at a time when there's very little sunspot, but it's actually at a time when there's more likely to be bigger storms than usual, like the Carrington event of 1859 and the Northern Quebec event of 1989, which is 1/3 as much power as the Carrington event. These things it's going to be like in a stellar bowling alley. It's going to get crazy in the next few years, isn't it? Back in a moment with Professor McKinney's response.
And when you're out there without care, yeah, I was out of touch. But it wasn't because I didn't know enough.
Welcome back to the NUTRIMEDICAL Report. And now we're going to hear from Professor McKinney after my little diatribe there. Professor McKinney, you mentioned about some conjunctions, you talked about solar activity, etc., and also real estate in Florida and elsewhere. Let's hear the whole story.
I was talking about the solar conditions. You were talking about the sunspot air 1944, which was the biggest sunspot in 10 years. So the thing that's unusual is that we went for about a period of well over 3 years with no sunspots at all when we were in the solar minimum. And now we are having very low sunspot activity. But about a week ago, the sunspot air 1944 put out a kind of an M-class flare, and it was touted as being a mega flare, and it really wasn't. and I was on the Coast to Coast radio show. I sometimes do a solar update there. And I said, but watch out for January 11th, because that's when the inferior conjunction of Venus is going to occur. And that is typically a time when we see increased sunspot activity, which we did. We went from 2 sunspots, air 1944 and maybe 45. There might have been a 48 at the time, but we went from 2 or 3 sunspots to 12 overnight. So it was pretty much exactly what I was saying. The sunspot, and then we got the reaction also because we had Jupiter, Earth's new moon passing, which is a trigger mechanism, and then Venus, inferior conjunction, all at the same time. So we did get a burst, but in a normal sunspot cycle, we would have gotten a tremendous amount of activity during that conjunction. So what we're seeing is, and then couple this with the very cold weather in the United States, what we're seeing are very weak solar conditions. So it's hard to predict the future, but we've already passed solar maximum, and so it'll be interesting to see how this spring carries out in the northern hemisphere, all the way around the globe, Europe, Russia.
Three and a half years ago, they had a major conference in Chicago with Dr. Habubil Adamazatov from the Russian Space Agency, Dr. Easterbrook, many others, 40, 50 scientists. And they basically came to the conclusion conjointly that 2014 would be the formal start of the Maunder-type mini ice age. And all the evidence is the solar activity is decreasing dramatically. When I see reports by morons that try to say that plasma physics and the sun activity has nothing to do with global warming, these people need to have their head examined. They have bad sciences. They make theories that can't be validated by any of their stupid ideas. They fiddle the data by changing the monitoring stations, which they did when they tried to, in the late 90s, try to say that it was global warming, when in fact they had just taken the data out from the northern monitoring stations and just counted the data from the southern ones. But I'd like you to comment on this, because an ice age will kill over a decade or more people than a nuclear war. People don't realize we're heading into a Maunder ice age. This is what precipitated the Mongol invasion into Europe. This is what precipitated the movement of the Vikings down into Europe with all the wars at the Maunder time, in the time when they had to evacuate Greenland. The northern hordes had to come down because they were freezing to death and starving to death because of an ice age. And that's what we're heading into right now. It happens every 360 years, a mini ice age. But we're also at the convergence of the 11,500-year medium-range ice age and 105,000-year. We're actually converging on all 3 ice age cycles. So this could be the start of a very long period of global cooling. And we also have geoengineering of the upper atmosphere, Fukushima Daiichi, which is destroying the ozone layer, which could destroy the carbon-oxygen cycle in the oceans with the phytoplankton. There's a lot of other fulcrum factors, but mankind's not causing global warming. It's actual global cooling. It's just insane that these minuscule microbrains are still pushing policies, including Obama, still pushing nuclear when he hasn't raised a finger to stop Fukushima, and still proliferating again. They still have this treaty that, well, yeah, you can give Iran the ability to have nuclear reactors, because as long as they promise to be really good and not make nuclear weapons, every single nuclear reactor is an excuse to make radioisotope material for nuclear detonators. They should be banned. It's ridiculous. There's no need for them. We can have newer technology. We don't need nuclear reactors, period. We should disable all of them.
Well, the situation is very dire. The reports from the Pacific Ocean, with the life food chain being disrupted, starting out with the plankton, and a lot of dead sea life just dead on the seafloor. And the tuna radiate high levels of radiation in tuna off the west coast of California.
Right.
Yeah, we've got a real major problem, and nobody is talking about it. But
we're talking about it, but we're mad as hell. And we're not going to take it anymore. Phytoplankton amplify radio concentration 100 times, fish 10,000 times, sea lions 1 million times, and things like bluefin tuna we call the super animals of the ocean. These are like Lamborghinis of the ocean in terms of fish. They concentrate billions of times the heavy metals and radiotoxins. So The reason why the oceans are dying is because we've cut off the carbon oxygen cycle, and 98% of the seafloor, 150 miles off the coast of California, is covered now with dead sea life. This is no joke, and we're going to start seeing a drop in world concentration of oxygen, which is necessary to make an ozone layer to protect us from cosmic radiation, ultraviolet light and background, which will also kill our crops, and force people indoors during the day. They'll have to wear special clothing and hats, like they do by law in Australia, where there's often very large holes in the ozone layer. It's against the law to have your children out without suits that look like the 1920s that cover most of their body, because they get UV burns very quickly in Australia, because it's a totally different spectral light pattern, and there's an increase in ultraviolet B light, C and D, in the last 23 years that is dramatically pushed toward higher energy UVB, C, and D light that's very dangerous. So we're dealing with what I call crop dangerous UV light. We're dealing with ozone destruction. We're dealing with ice age happening, and the very high possibility of a coronal mass ejection that will be similar to the Quebec one at least. If the Quebec one was centric and hit that centric hit our center of the United States or the coastal areas of either coast, we'd lose most of our power grid. And now all the step-down transformers and equipment is made in China, so we don't have good, working relationships with China. They just say, we no deliver. And that's it. Yeah. You're screwed. And so people don't understand this. We're not getting along with the Chinese right now. We're ticking them off. We're not working out contracts. We're not trying to say, well, you can sell stuff, but don't pollute your cities, and don't sell the stuff that has melamine in our dog food, and don't sell us garbage, and don't try to steal our copyrights and our patents. Work with us on a reasonable basis, rather than justifying each other to build war machines so we can kill each other. This is just craziness, and we need to stop it. We should get more mature as human beings, realize this isn't the way to go.
Yeah. The other thing I was talking about, Dr. Bill, was the economic situation in Florida. And, of course, Florida is a tourist state primarily, but it's also a retirement state and a very active financial state in many respects because it's a crossroad of the entire Caribbean. But what's going on is that over in the fall months, the housing prices were dropping $10,000 a month. Now they are dropping $10,000 a week, with people trying to sell them desperately, trying to get out of their whatever banking arrangement they have. Right. But they have blocks and blocks of empty houses or houses that are for sale or in foreclosure. So it's an indication of a mobile society, one of the more mobile parts of our society, but it's in an area that is literally failing before our very eyes. So it's an indicator of the financial collapse of the United States. I mean, the very last death throes of the financial collapse. The financial collapse actually occurred many years ago.
But every country and economic system is in a slightly different disease state, collapsing them. China is in collapse. They've created more credit than all other banking systems in the world in the last 5 years. They're in collapse. Japan's definitely in collapse. Their yen is worth half what it was a year ago. The European Central Bank, you're talking about bailing in people's deposits. They're in collapse. Russia is hanging on by their fingernails, terrified by the fact that we're hydrofracking and the oil industry is going to shift toward us from Russia. They have a single economy based on oil. They don't have really a diverse economy. And the Chinese just make stuff to sell to us, and if we don't allow it to happen or we move to a more, how can I say it, the amount of, the Baltic Dry Index has really dropped 35% in the past couple weeks, which means we're heading toward an economic cardiac arrest coming real soon. Any comments, John Rand? What's that?
Well, I think we covered everything, and thank you for having me on, Dr. Bill. It's the Liberty Man signing off.
And thank you, Ann. Any comments?
Well, Japan is threatening China's development in Africa.
Yes, exactly. And China's trying to diversify and grab all this territory because they know what's happening, and they're getting radiated as well.
This is One for the Record. I'm Diane, and today is January 22nd, 2013. Here are your news updates for today. It's very cold. Very, very cold in Central Florida right now. Let's go to E&E News, Energy News. Kyoto News. Fukushima raises concerns over viability of Japan's future. Former Prime Minister reactor restarts. A criminal act towards future generations. Fate of country at stake. Myth that nuclear power, clean and safe, has collapsed. Hooray! Oh, finally someone realizes it. Also, highest yet radiation level hits new record in Fukushima groundwater well. Over 3 million becquerels liter of strontium and beta emitters. Also, nuclear expert, Fukushima very critical for entire humankind. Japan won't let any foreign experts visit. They are behaving rather strangely. Well, I guess they aren't having the Olympics then, are they? Nuclear scientists. Radioactive emissions still taking place all the time. Pouring contamination in ocean may cause elimination of fish resources. Okay. U.S. Canada. E&E News. TV. Problem with killer whales local to West Coast. Only baby born in 2013 died. Just 2 born in 2012. Depleted fish supply blamed. No, you blame Fukushima blamed. That's what you do. Alright. Well, I'm attaching a lot of videos. It's very cold. Me and the pets are going to snuggle up and get under the blankies. Right, Max? Tippy? And what is that back there? Oh, that's the cat curled up back there. Alright. And I'll see you again tomorrow on the flip side. Stay safe, stay warm. Always carry an extra snowsuit in your car. Blankets, everything. Be prepared. Water. Be prepared for anything. Alrighty then. And I'm going to attach a bunch of stuff for you guys. Take care. See you tomorrow. Be safe.
This is amazing. Do you know who Rabbi Kaduri is? He had a prophecy and a vision of Jesus. If you know me, you know that I am very, very much aware of deception, lying signs and wonders. It's not easy to make me believe that someone has a legitimate vision or not.
And as you can see in Joel 2:29, the Bible says, "And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, and your young men shall see visions." Now this is not saying that only young men will have visions and old men will dream dreams. It's just saying from the oldest to the youngest that dreams and visions will be happening during those days.
The only way we can be sure about visions and dreams and signs is to compare it with the ancient scriptures. If there's something that doesn't line up with the Bible, it's deceptive. It's deceptive. It's deceptive. It just so happens, though, that Rabbi Kaduri's vision of Jesus lines up with the ancient scriptures. What was his vision? What happened? First of all, Rabbi Kaduri was the most well-respected Orthodox rabbi, highly intelligent, highly loved, probably the most well-respected rabbi of this generation. He lived to be 108 years old before he died. It was well known that he memorized large portions of the Bible, including the Torah itself. Everyone looked up to him as a leader, as a healer, and as a mentor. And before he died, Jesus appeared to him. And Jesus told him something that is unfolding right before our eyes. Take a look at this.
On April the 30th, 2007, just a little over 3 years ago, Israel Today ran this amazing headline story. Rabbi reveals the name of the Messiah. Rabbi Kaduri was famously known for his memorization of the Bible, the Talmud, and other Jewish writings. He was a teacher and a revered master at Nahalat Yitzhak Yeshiva Seminary. He knew Jewish sages and celebrities of the last century and rabbis who lived in the Holy Land who kept the faith alive before the state of Israel was even born. Kaduri was not only highly esteemed because of his age of 108, but he was charismatic and wise. Chief rabbis looked up to him as a righteous man. Thousands visited him to ask for counsel or healing. His followers speak of many miracles, and his students say that he was a prophet of many disasters. A few months before Kaduri died at the age of 108, he surprised his followers when he told them that he had personally met the Messiah. The Messiah had appeared to him. He wrote the name of the Messiah in a note, he said. His official website had mentioned the Messiah note. David Kaduri, the rabbi's 80-year-old son, confirmed that in his last year, his father had talked and dreamed almost exclusively about the Messiah and his coming. My father has met the Messiah in a vision, he said, and he told us that he was coming very soon. Kaduri gave a message in his synagogue on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, teaching how to recognize the Messiah. He also mentioned that the Messiah would appear to Israel after Ariel Sharon passed. When Kaduri died, January the 28th, 2006, more than 200,000 people joined the funeral procession on the streets of Jerusalem to pay their respects as he was taken to his final resting place. Shortly before he died, this teacher of Israel wrote the name of the Messiah on a small note which he requested would remain sealed for 1 year. 1 year later, the note was opened in 2007. When the note was opened, it read as follows. Concerning the letter abbreviation of the Messiah's name, he will lift the people and prove that his word and law are valid. The Hebrew sentence with the hidden name of the Messiah reads like this. The acronym of that sentence, that is, the letter abbreviation that Kaduri spoke of, or the first initials of each word, spell the Hebrew name of Jesus, or Yehoshua, or Yeshua, the Hebrew root word of salvation. When the name of Yehoshua appeared in Kaduri's message, ultra-Orthodox Jews from his seminary in Jerusalem argued that their master must not have left the exact solution for decoding the Messiah's name. The revelation received scant coverage in the Israeli media. Only the Hebrew websites, News First Class and Kaduri.net mentioned the Messiah's note, both of them insisting that it was authentic. Israel Today spoke to two of Kaduri's followers in Jerusalem who admitted that the note was authentic, but very confusing for his followers as well. We have no idea how the rabbi got to this name of the Messiah, one of them said. I know this. The answer of the identity of the Messiah as Jesus, given to Kaduri supposedly, is absolute truth. As such, I believe it had to have been revealed from Jesus himself, appearing to Kaduri, much the same as Jesus appeared to the Jewish Pharisee, Paul, on the road to Damascus 2,000 years ago. It is amazing that the leading Jewish teacher of Israel until 2006 would, on his deathbed, proclaim in a message that Jesus Christ is the Messiah and is soon to return. That is astounding and almost unthinkable. It is also amazing that he was specifically told that Jesus would return shortly after Ariel Sharon's death. Ariel Sharon is in a coma. Could it be that this modern-day Apostle Paul received from the Lord Jesus that his return is indeed very, very soon?
Brothers and sisters, Ariel Sharon is on his deathbed right now. His condition has gotten worse. His family is about to pull the plug. He's about to die. He's about to die. He's about to die. One of the reasons we know we're the last generation is because Israel, the true bloodline of Israel, is back in their original homeland, which is prophesied that would happen in the last days. What does the Bible say about Israel in the last days? Why is this so significant that Israel becomes aware of the true Messiah, Jesus, Yeshua? We're going to take a look now at the ancient scriptures and find out what the purpose of Rabbi's vision was. Being a Jew, when most Jews don't believe in the Christian Jesus, what is God doing through this man? Could it be that God is now starting to wake up the 144,000 Jews that will prophesy, that will preach the gospel to the ends of the world during the Great Tribulation hour?
All right, let's look at the ancient scriptures. My position today is I believe Rabbi Kaduri is open. God is using him to open up the hearts and minds of the Jewish people in preparation for the 144,000 that is prophesied to evangelize the world during the tribulation hour. We know that the Jews were broken off and given a blindness for a temporary period of time, and we find that in Romans chapter 11. Paul is talking to the Gentiles about their condition and the condition of the Hebrews, and how God has preserved an elect out of the Jewish nation by his grace. Romans chapter 11, I say then, hath God cast away his people? God forbid, for I'm an Israelite. Verse 2, God hath not cast away his people which he foreknew. And we're going to skip down to verse 11. And I want you to read the whole thing, just so you know I'm not giving this a twisted interpretation. I'm getting to the important parts here. In verse 4, Paul is writing what God had done in the Old Testament. He's re-quoting him. And he says this of God. But what hath saith the answer of God unto him? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have not bowed their knee to the image of Baal. God can reserve people for his purpose. Verse 5. Even so then at this present time, also there is a remnant according to the election of grace. God had spared a remnant of the people of Israel, an election of the people of Israel during the time of blindness and hardening of Israel's heart. That's what this is saying. Verse 6 talks about grace. And if by grace, then it is no more of works. Otherwise, grace is no more of works. And it goes on and talks about works and grace there. Romans 11, verses 7 and 8. What then? Hath Israel not obtained that which he seeketh? But the election hath obtained it, and the rest were blinded. He's specifically talking about the election out of Israel, those such as Paul and Peter and the apostles and disciples. They were the election of grace, and the rest were blinded. Israel as a nation was blinded and cast off. Verse 8, according as it is written, God hath given them a spirit of slumber, sleepy eyes, so they cannot see, and ears, so they cannot hear, and even unto this day. But God is going to spare them, as you'll see here coming up. Romans 11:11. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? God forbid. But rather through their fall, salvation has come to the Gentiles, for to provoke them to jealousy. God specifically did this for a reason. But rather through their fall, salvation has come to the Gentiles. You understand that? Verse 15 and 17. For if the casting away of them be reconciliation of the world, what shall the receiving of them be? But life from the dead. Verse 17. And if some of the branches be broken off, and thou, being a wild olive tree, were grafted in among them, and with them partakest of the root and fatness of the olive tree, boast not against the branches. Verse 19, thou wilt say then, the branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Verse 20, well, because of their unbelief they were broken off, and thou standest by faith. Be not high-minded, but fear. For if God spared not the natural branches, take heed, lest he also spare not thee. Verse 23 and 24. And if they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. Now that's a promise right there, that if they abide not in unbelief, they shall be grafted in again. Israel will be grafted back into the olive tree if they abide not in unbelief. rejecting the Messiah. Verse 24, for if thou were cut out of an olive tree which is wild by nature, and were grafted in contrary to the nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? In other words, he's saying, if God so easily gave the Gentiles room in his tree, how much faster will he make room for the original branches, which were the Jewish people? 25-26. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part is happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles is come in. And he says in verse 26, and so all Israel will be saved, as it is written, all of Israel will be saved. And that doesn't mean every Jew or every Hebrew person. It means every tribe, all 12 tribes, a remnant from all 12 tribes will be saved. And that's exactly what we find in Revelation chapter 7. Revelation chapter 7 shows us the 144,000 Jews, 12,000 from each tribe. Every tribe is named, and it proves that this 144,000 are literal bloodline Jews that were preserved, that were spared as a remnant seed from the original branches throughout all these generations. Let's read it. Revelation 7:1. And after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on the trees. And I saw another angel ascending from heaven, having a seal of the living God. And he cried out with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and sea, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of God in their foreheads. And I heard the number of them which were sealed, and they were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. Verse 5, and it starts naming the tribes, and I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to read the name. There's Judah, Reuben, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh, Simon, Levi, Issachar, Zabulon, Joseph, and Benjamin. 12. Count them. The scripture proves that Israel, all of Israel, will be saved. All the children of Jacob, the original tribes of Israel, spared, a remnant seed that God is going to take 12,000 from each tribe during the tribulation hour, and they will evangelize the world. Revelation 14:1. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the mountain, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, and the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung, as it were a new song, before the throne, before the 4 beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed